Madam Speaker, this is not the first contribution I've made in this House in support of voluntary assisted dying. I believe it is the fourth, and I really hope it is the last. It may surprise people to know that the first time was actually not an easy vote for me. I weighed carefully the range of views on the debate, and I was genuinely shocked when I found myself hesitant. I thought it would be an easy vote to have. I was pro-choice, so of course I was pro-euthanasia, but the construct and the protections are complex, and I spent time coming to fully support it. This bill gives me no such hesitation. I support it because it is well drafted, it is well consulted, and it is a model that has been tested. And I want to thank Mike Gaffney for the work that he has done in bringing this bill forward. I attended all bar one of the forums in Bass, where Mike gave so freely of his time, took every question on board and answered them so sensibly and seriously, and took on a lot of those learnings, and I appreciate that. I also want to put on record my thanks to Margaret Singh, who has been committed to this cause for such a very long time. And I want to thank those who've told their stories, some of which I'll tell today, but particularly to Nat and Jack. Thank you. The debate in the upper house was very detailed, very meticulous, and leaves us all with a good understanding of intent and of consequence. This bill will not apply to very many people. In fact, it's one of the criticisms that people have, is that it might be a bit narrow. A good and well-respected friend of mine, who is a doctor, opposes VAD and said that the only people who ever asked him to end their life recovered afterwards. This bill is not for those patients. It is for patients who will die regardless of any medical support. It speaks, however, to how they die. It will not pick up lots of people, but will, as one of my constituents said in relation to her friend who died in much pain, it may make only a few days' difference in a lifespan, but a huge difference in the manner of passing. As I said, this isn't my first contribution. Feel free to read the others, which deal with many technicalities of this type of legislation. I've lost friends to terminal illnesses in the past, and in the vast majority of cases their pain was managed and managed well. But some of you will know that in recent months, end of life and the quality of end of life for those who have the most cruel of diseases has become deeply personal for me. I feel an obligation now more than ever, Madam Speaker, to get this right. This bill does have a clear process, clear protections, and is the product of an understanding of how this legislation works in other jurisdictions, and it has significant support. I have to say, disappointed that we will not take this bill through its full stages in this sitting. I think that was possible. We could have sat for longer. I do not believe that the debate will be in any way aided by the proposed research. I believe that work has already been done. I do not believe that the views that are held and will be cast with today's second reading vote will actually change. I appreciate the internal challenges that the Premier has within his own party and that he chose to allow this debate, and I am very pleased that he did that. I'm also very pleased that Ms Courtney has agreed to oversee its passage and steer it through the House. But I think that in order to manage those constructs, we are unnecessarily putting people through more trauma, as for the next few months they're going to be required to tell their deeply painful experiences again and again, and with that comes trauma. I note that in a practical sense, the Premier has said that should the bill pass next year, that it will be backdated. This is an administrative construct within the planned implementation. I hope that that backdating comes with a commitment for the full required funding for implementation. We know that in Victoria it cost around $6.4 million. In making my contribution today, I want to give voice to the many people who've contacted me on both sides of the debate. Overwhelmingly, they have been respectful, though in many cases deeply distressing, and I'll try to give voice to a few who made representative points of the many. The vivid image of people jumping from the Twin Towers will stay with us forever. These people made a choice, but it was not a choice to die, a choice, however, of how they died. And New York Chief Medical Examiner Charles Gersh refused to classify their choice not to endure a slow, agonising death as suicide. So what this bill is absolutely not about, it is not about suicide. And it is wrong to say that. And in fact, this type of legislation acts to prevent suicide. We were also asked, as MPs, by experts in suicide prevention not to conflate the choice of voluntary assisted dying with suicide because of the risk of suicide ideation. All members received that advice. I'm angry that some have chosen to ignore it. To choose to do so was reckless and irresponsible. I have permission to read this correspondence from Sally, sent to Minister Ferguson in relation to his comments. I'm writing to you in response to an article that was run in the Mercury this week. The paper reported that you stated you would not support VAD. The article goes on to state that you said, I don't believe in physician-assisted suicide, and I do believe a bill that crosses the line of taking a life of one person by another or assisting in a suicide is a line I'm absolutely not prepared to cross. I'm writing to you as a healthcare professional with 28 years' experience as a frontline paramedic for 2 state ambulance services, including Tasmania. I have 20 years' experience as a professional psychotherapist. I'm an academic with 4 health-related university degrees, and I'm a PhD candidate. But more importantly, I write to you as a 55-year-old wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, sister, auntie, niece and friend who's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I've witnessed the painful death of my sister who died from cancer aged 42, and now my other older sister has terminal cancer and fighting the horrible battle alongside me. I have too many family members to mention who have died or are currently dying from cancer, and I witnessed the slow deterioration of my father who had end-stage chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I saw life drain away from him and witnessed this energetic man who had a passion to live fade away into someone who looked like they auditioned for a role on The Shawshank Redemption. No one should experience this. Firstly, I would like to address the terminology used, suicide. There are fundamental differences between people who choose to die by completing suicide and those who choose to die with medical assistance by a highly trained medical professional. People who choose to complete suicide usually have experienced some type of psychological trauma or distress that they have found so overwhelming that they can see no other option but to end their life. These people have a will and a desire to die. People who are choosing to hasten an already inevitable and imminent death have a physiological condition that cannot be cured. There is no plan B, there are no other options. These people are not wanting to kill themselves. In fact, they have a very strong will and desire to live. The disease is what is killing them. As a terminally ill person, it is not my choice to have a disease that cannot be cured. It is not my choice to die. I want to see my youngest sons get married. I want to meet their children. I want to watch my grandsons grow up. I want to celebrate my 60th birthday, but now I know I won't have that luxury. I want to celebrate my husband's 60th, which is only 2.5 years away, but I most likely won't be able to do that either. There are milestones in my sons' and grandsons' lives that I hoped I could have experienced, and I hope I could have completed my PhD, but now I will not be able to. Terminally ill people do not want to complete suicide. Remember, the desire is not to die. If this bill was to pass through and the VAD legislation passed, all you are agreeing to is providing people like myself, my family members and others who are suffering from a disease that has no cure, the right to choose when to die. It is the disease that is killing us, not a medical practitioner, not ourselves. The disease. There is no cure. The medical practitioner's goal is to ease the pain and suffering of their patients, not to assist in a suicide. They are professionals, not killers. Please, make your decision based on what is best for people. I can understand your belief system does not support completing suicide, but as I have stated, this is not a suicide act. I want to live. It's the disease that has decided I won't. It is not a sin to want to die with dignity. It should be my right and my choice. Madam Speaker, many people have asked whether this legislation is instead of palliation and why do we not focus on palliation, but it is overwhelmingly in addition to palliation. Because palliation is not always the answer. The very best to care, and we have witnessed some of the most amazing palliative care in family members who have passed away, but the very best care cannot always end suffering. This bill is about how we respond to intolerable pain and suffering. It enhances the tool that we have to care for people at the end of their life. It does not replace them. It's also about people's experiences as they hold the hands and endure the physical pain of those they love. And Todd has asked particularly that I put this on the record. My sister and I are currently sitting at my mother's bedside, where we have been for the past 3 weeks for 15 hours a day. We are watching our mother slowly pass away in constant pain, and despite medical experts' best efforts, my mother has endured pain and suffering I would not wish upon my worst enemy. Our past few days alongside her have been spent watching her drown in her own mucus and mopping it up as it came out of her mouth between gasps. This is an experience I had hoped to never witness again after my father died of stomach cancer and had to endure the same. This vote is not just about the dying, it's also about the families left behind. I challenge all our politicians to walk through aged care homes and hospitals and speak to the carers and nurses. I challenge our politicians to talk to families affected and hear their stories firsthand. This should not be a religious or a political idealism vote. It should be a vote based on compassion and moral decency. And this is a message from Judith. Death does not need to be painful, and people should not have to suffer at the end of life. It is time for compassion, and it is time for politicians to step back and let people determine their life's direction and use VAD if they choose. The protections drafted in this legislation provide excellent safeguards for vulnerable people, so the naysayers are being deliberately misleading with their fear-mongering. I was a former hospital CEO and Director of Nursing at a small private hospital, as well as an Assistant Director of Nursing at Alfred Hospital. for 10 years with qualifications in intensive and cardiothoracic care. Educationally, I have a Bachelor of Applied Science in Advanced Nursing, a postgrad dip in Health Administration and a Master's Health Science Health Administration degree. I watched both my parents die slowly over several days when all hope of recovery was gone. As a nurse, I saw both my mother and father become semi-comatose and dehydrate as neither were able to take food or fluid. Both of my parents were passing dark blood-coloured urine through their catheters as their kidneys shut down. Both moaned as their bodies spiked to awful temperatures that occurred during a protracted dying process. Their bodies cramped with pain and they groaned even in coma. The subcutaneous, the under-the-skin morphine, didn't work because the skin is the first organ that shuts down when someone is so ill the morphine does not absorb when given subcutaneously. Both of my parents were pro-choice for end of life and had made their wishes clear to family members about wanting to die gently and with dignity, but they were denied that choice. My mum and dad were great people who went without to give their children a good education and a better life. They contributed to the community. My mum was a nurse and dad an air traffic controller. They were both intelligent people. My mother had an autoimmune respiratory failure and end-stage lung cancer. My father had end-stage lung cancer with cerebellar metastasis. At both ends, both had intractable pain and struggled for every breath. My mother attempted to take her own life because she could not find support to finish her suffering. She was unsuccessful. As a charge nurse in a major hospital, I was able to care for my patients and ensure they had a gentle and dignified death by ensuring the doctors wrote appropriate medication orders that eased the patient's suffering. Both of my parents begged me to help them, to end their lives, but legally I could not. This haunts me to this day because I watched them suffer when I had the knowledge to give them the peaceful death they wanted. But the law was in the way and the standards of care vary greatly. So many people have ugly, cruel deaths, racked with pain. It is inhumane to allow people to suffer like this. Madam Speaker, one of the most powerful messages from the Victorian Review addressed the impact of suicide rates upon terminally ill people. It is not that all of these people would have been able to, or in fact would have ever actually accessed voluntary assisted dying, but knowing the possibility there meant that they approached their terminal illness with more control. So the rates of suicide in Victoria declined with the introduction of this legislation for terminally ill patients, because it's one of the things about terminal illnesses. It takes away the ability to control so much. It shouldn't take away our decision to make this choice. I've been heartbroken to read the letters, and I'm sure that we all have, of families who have had a terminally ill person take their lives alone, and hear their stories of how much they would have liked to be with them, hold them, and envelop them in their love in those moments. Claire has asked me to read this. End-of-life palliative care is a protracted form of euthanasia that takes a lot longer to die and causes the patient and those they love trauma and grief. We all know the loved one will eventually get pneumonia and gasp for air for days. In that last 5 months of her life, my mother was totally lost, unable to speak, had 9 separate admissions to different nursing homes. They could not deal with her because of shockingly low staff levels, with one nurse on duty at night in a high care ward. In that 5 months, she had 11 admissions to emergency for falls and injuries. I saw her one day lying utterly naked on a bed by the windows of the corridors of Box Hill Hospital. At home, she woke up every morning crying, asking to die for 5 years. Her life was hell. She would wander off. She would have falls in the bathroom and the ambulance was called to get her up. She had nightmares and screamed out every night. She had hallucinations, became violent and wandered off. 4 years after his beloved wife died, my father, a man who took pride in everything he did, who cared for elderly friends, organised functions for them, lost his 31-year battle with prostate cancer when it metastasised into his bones. He persevered until his birthday that year, and after a beautiful night with me, my younger brother and my girls, we left knowing what was imminent. For anyone listening, the next bit that I'm about to read is particularly distressing, and if anyone is listening, they might want to walk away for a few moments. On the 22nd of June, 2 weeks afterwards, he pulled the nylon rope from his shed, put the ladder against it, and somehow at 91 years of age, he put the noose around his neck and found a way to stop his horrendous pain. I live with the pain of knowing I was unable to help him, that I could not be with him and hold him and support him. I would have liked to have sat behind him and wrapped my arms around him, surrounded by my girl who he adored, and rock him as he left us. Please, please, please pass this bill for all of us, for my sake, for your sake, and for those we love. Madam Speaker, none of us would want to die alone. In my final comments, I'll probably cry less, I want to address the views of those who say that their faith prevents them from supporting this view. and give voice to those who say their faith compels them to support it. I'm an O'Byrne. We are not without a religious background. I hear the words of people of faith, but I do contend that faith allows you also to interpret teachings. I in no way wish to offend those who have faith, but I have to put the alternate view. Reverend Trevor Bench, a former hospital chaplain and a Baptist minister, has said that his call for voluntary euthanasia is compassionate and thoroughly consistent with the teachings of Jesus. Professor Hans Kung, a Catholic theologian, has said, as a Christian and a theologian, I am convinced that an all-merciful God who has given men and women freedom and responsibility for their lives has also left to dying people the responsibility for making a conscientious decision about the manner and time of their deaths. This is a responsibility which neither the state or the church, neither a theologian or a doctor can take away. And also famously and powerfully, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, has said that he does not believe that to ensure terminally ill patients avoid unbearable pain is in fact unchristian. He said, one of the key themes of the Gospels is love for our fellow human beings. Today we face a terrible paradox. In strictly observing the accepted teaching about the sanctity of life, the Church could actually be sanctioning anguish and pain, the very opposite of the Christian message. As I said, I do not seek to lecture people of faith, but I wanted to put on record the views of the many people of faith who have called upon us to pass this legislation, who believe it is entirely keeping with their religious beliefs. Please pass this bill. Pass it because it's good legislation. Pass it because the intent is overwhelmingly supported by our constituents. Pass it for families who have suffered and grieved today. Pass it for people who are in pain. But mostly pass it because we should not be accepting that ending life in misery and agony is better than helping people for whom death is inevitable to leave this life in the best possible way.
Allegiance.